Hi, I'd like to talk to you about Rick Astley's lawsuit against Young Gravy. Young Gravy was sued by Rick Astley for the use of his iconic song Never Gonna Give You Up in the track Betty Get Money. Nowadays we live in a time where remakes of classics from the 80s and the 90s is really popular. And that must have been exactly the idea of Young Gravy and his team. Now, before you can actually use somebody else's music, you need the right permissions. If you're using the composition, you need a copyright license or permission to use the composition and or the lyrics. If you use the recording, then you need a neighboring rights license. Now, in this case, Young Gravy and his producers only obtained an interpolation license, meaning that a small part of a composition can be used, but they need to replay it. So they re-recorded that composition with their own instruments in their own studio and remade a part of that instrumental and used that new recording in Betty Get Money. Apparently, they also asked Rick Astley if they could use the recording of Rick Astley's vocal, but that was denied. Young Gravy and his producers tried to circumvent that by actually re-recording the vocals, but in such a way that it sounded very, very similar to the original. All the significant characteristics of Rick Astley's intonation, his pronunciation, his sound color, it was all emulated in the new recording. And that was not to Rick Astley's liking. So he dropped a lawsuit on their doorstep. The lawsuit is based on 3 grounds. It is a violation of publicity, and that basically means that somebody's voice is such a unique identifier that only that person can actually decide what happens to somebody's voice. And if you're coattailing on somebody's specific voice, then that can be unlawful. The second ground on which the lawsuit is based is a violation of the Lanham Act, and that act says you cannot make misleading statements, you cannot do false advertising, and you cannot make false endorsement claims. The third ground on which the lawsuit is based is actually unfair competition. And the lawsuit claims that through fraud, malice, and oppression, the producers and Young Gravy have only enriched themselves to the detriment of Rick Astley. The claim of Rick Astley is to actually get damages, and those damages should be equal to all the income generated with the track Betty Get Money. Now, you ask, is this claim a frivolous claim, or does it actually have some merit? Well, it does have some merit, but it is good to actually realize once again that this claim is not based on recording rights or copyright. So it has actually nothing to do with the music right. It is completely based in the context of tort and unlawful actions. And that actually makes that this claim might actually stick. Before this claim goes to court, people will probably try once again to settle. And it will depend on the negotiators and the party's incentive to actually settle if a settlement might be actually successful or not. It could well be, especially when parties have very opposing positions, that those parties actually think there is more to gain with actually going to court. So we will have to see what happens there. So will this lawsuit actually have a stifling effect on creativity? Yes, I would think. You could see that in the aftermath of the Blurred Lines case. In the slipstream of that case, a lot of frivolous lawsuits were actually filed, claiming that non-copyrightable elements were all of a sudden copyrightable, and because my track sounded a little bit like yours, it was all copyright infringement, until the Supreme Court set the record straight in the Led Zeppelin decision. But it could well be that this particular case, where somebody's signature sound, and especially a signature sound that has some proven commercial value, when there is coattailing or blatant simulation of that it could lead to more lawsuits. So is it a good thing that Rick Astley is suing? I understand his reasoning, because for him it actually means that he has lost control over what happens to his voice and to his likeness, and he may actually lose some commercial opportunities because of Young Gravy's actions. But all in all, it could also have a detrimental effect on creativity. We will have to wait and see what happens with this one. But in the meantime, tell me what you think. Is it a frivolous lawsuit in your opinion, or does Rick Astley have a good chance of succeeding in court? Let me know, and until next time.